So I want to touch, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but how do you, actually, no, we did touch on that a lot. I was going to say, how do you recognize when someone else is going through it? Let's discuss techniques. Okay, so if we got somebody who's watching this right now who says, okay, I don't feel good. I don't feel right. Okay. One technique I would recognize or recommend for them is to find a way to unplug and do something you enjoy to do. Right? And,
sure.
And I'm not talking about clinical depression, right? I'm not talking about someone who may need additional assistance. I'm talking about just somebody who's like...
In a funk.
Yeah. Right? Let's talk about that funk for a little bit. You know, you go through your work week, it's now your weekend, and you're not doing anything else. And you feel miserable. Okay? You don't know why. So, first of all, we got to break that funk. Right? You got to recognize what it is, and you got to say, okay, I don't feel like doing this, but I'm going to make myself do it anyways, because I know logically I enjoy doing that. Okay, I went through a phase in my life where, because I enjoy going hunting, right? Hunting's my thing. And it's not always, it has nothing really to do about killing animals. It's about getting out in nature.
Sure.
And just hiking around and seeing God's country, so to speak.
Right.
Right? And maybe every once in a while, but I'll go out 20 times and maybe I'll kill a deer. You know, right. But really it's about getting out and just unplugging. But I went through a phase where I did not enjoy hunting anymore. You know, I had no desire to do it. I was considering selling off much of my gear. And this was 10, 12 years, 11 years, no, would have been 8 years ago. And I finally had to just stop and recognize, hold on, that's a problem. Because this is something I enjoyed for years.
So you did that?
I basically had to, you had to look in the mirror.
Right.
Right? I'm like, now, there's a problem here. There's something going on. I enjoyed doing this for years, and now I don't. Okay? And so, obviously, the first step I had to do was, I got to go hunting. I got to make myself go do it. You know, and I went out, I can't remember if I was duck hunting or if I went out coyote hunting, one of those. I didn't get anything, but I was still out in nature, and I said, okay, this is cool. You know, and then I started kind of surrounding myself with that. Let me watch some YouTube videos about hunting. Let me read a book or watch a TV show or a movie that talks about it or something like that. You know, and kind of re-excite myself into that and break that mold and break out of that. But it's hard to recognize that's what you're needing, right? Not everyone's going to look in the mirror and say, holy crap, what I used to enjoy, I no longer enjoy.
Right.
You know, so what might be, and as we already said, there's nothing that, something that might work for me is not going to work for the next guy. Right?
It's true.
And so, how do we look at somebody like a coworker and try and get them to say, okay, hey man, you're in a funk, and we're going to help you break out of that. What can we, like, I don't know where I'm going with this, but like, how do you...
I get what you're saying.
I want to help people. How do I help people?
And so what you did for yourself was actually really good, because ultimately you realized that you kind of were able to step outside yourself and realize that there was a funk going on, right? Mm-hmm. And so ultimately I would say that there are times when you need to sort of fake it till you make it. Hate that phrase, but that's 100% true, where you're doing something when you don't feel like doing something.
That's the story of my law enforcement career.
Right? But working out and stuff like that, we have so much more to talk about. We could actually do this in session. But it's this, you want to be able to sort of do what you want to be able to do until you are actually wanting to do it. Right? Mm-hmm. Right? But the difference between the person who's faking it until they make it and the person who's actually doing the work that they need to work on to sort of deal with the core problems is, you can do the fake it till you make it. But if you're doing that type of stuff to cover up something else and you're not addressing the core issues, then all you're doing is basically holding up a mask until you get too tired to hold it up anymore, and then eventually you lash out at somebody, right? Mm-hmm. What it comes down to is you have to actually be willing to step into the problems that have gotten you to that point, right? You have to be, and that's the toughest part with first responders, is nobody ever wants to say there's something wrong with you, right? Like that's not something that we typically say. Who wants to hear that something's wrong with them, right? Because if you think about what happens when you are out, you know, if you're a first responder and you're active and you're in your element, everything's great. But if you get injured or something happens where you basically kind of slide out of that cycle, you feel completely lost, right? I'll be the first one to tell you that when I got injured and sort of went to that where I had to go into the whole workman's comp process, that was miserable. That was worse than anything I'd ever seen on the job because of what you had to go through. That depression, that sense of helplessness, and the fact that you weren't a productive member and nobody come by to see you and all that kind of stuff. And it's that idea that you got to be right in it. Well, if you're depressed, the last thing you want to do is be in it. You want to just be kind of stuck back in this hole. And it's that, and if you're faking it to all the people outside and not dealing with the things that brought you to that hole to begin with, then eventually you're just going to run out of energy and revert to drugs or end up beating your gun, honestly. And that's I hear a lot of people talking about that stuff, and it's shocking because it's got to be done. It's not just about faking it and doing the things and trying to figuring that stuff out. It's about stepping into as a part of a bigger process. You're doing this stuff, but you're also working on the core things that need to be fixed in order for you to be happy in the long run.
Mm-hmm. I think the people that worry me the most are the ones that they're not doing anything. And what I mean by that is, like, you work with them during the week, the weekend comes and goes, and you ask them, hey man, how's your weekend? You do anything? No. Just sat around the house, I watched the game, And I'm like, okay. And then, you work with this person for sometimes years on end.
Sure. And
you never hear about them doing anything for themselves. They don't take little trips for themselves. They don't do, maybe they live by themselves. Those are the people that scare me the most. Because I'm always worried. I'm like, man, one of these days I'm going to get a phone call about that guy. One of these days. And so you try and encourage them. I remember one guy, it was actually funny because I was worried about him because he never really talked about himself. But I interpreted that as, this guy doesn't do anything. He just lives by himself. He's single. He doesn't do anything. And so, I started kind of like forced conversation. I was like, what do you do for fun, man? What do you do? Like, trying to get him to, like, at least give me a sign that he's okay.
Sure.
Or either give me a sign that he's okay or give me a sign that he's not. Just something. Well, it turns out he just didn't like talking about himself. And really what it was is he liked watching the Food Network. He liked cooking and doing stuff. He was really into snowmobiles. He goes up to the mountains. He'll spend thousands of dollars on a brand new snowmobile, and he'll go take a trip by himself doing 40-mile loops out in the snow. And I'm like, oh, he's all right.
Right.
But,
well, we compare our insides to other people's outsides, right? Mm-hmm. But the simple fact is, most people don't know what's going on inside somebody. They can only go, oh, he looks fine. He's got a smile on his face. He does all this stuff. But he doesn't know that there's some personal hell that person's going through, right? Mm-hmm. So how many people do we walk by on a daily basis that are one compliment or insult away from jumping off a bridge, right? There's probably quite a few people, but it's because we basically go, well, I know how I'm feeling right now, and what I feel looks like this person right here. Mm-hmm. And that's inaccurate a lot.
Yeah, you reminded me, I think the first time I became very aware of how you interact and what you say to people was actually in high school, and I got summoned to the elementary school for a meeting, my mom and I had no idea what this was about. I'm like, what the heck? I'm in trouble for something? What did I do?
Right. We're automatically scared that you're in trouble. Though.
Yeah. And it turns out what happened, it was an event that I didn't even remember happening. But I guess I got on the bus. I was moving, and the high school was the last kids to get picked up before they took us all home. Mm-hmm. And there was a little girl who's kind of in the alley, and I said, hey, get out of the way, like move. And I step around her. Well, apparently I hurt her feelings. Okay, because the big cool high school kid that she was looking up to had some sort of negative interaction with her, and I hurt her feelings. So now here we are a month later. Mom's concerned because she's seeing notes at home saying, I want to hurt myself, I want to do this, I want to do that, blah, blah, blah. And this little girl cited this incident with me as like when it started, when she like was upset. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if that's true. I was looking at the notes thinking, I'm like, I think she has something else going on here. Right. I don't think this was all me. But that's what started this whole meeting. And so now, taking the story set aside, I was like, well, I guess I do got to think about the way I talk to people, because you're right. You don't know what they're going through. 100%. You can have that guy who's at home fighting with his wife, dealing with a rowdy teenager who's getting in the drugs and all this stuff, and then you tease him at work, because that's what cops do, right? It's constantly a pissing contest. Yep. You tease him at work and make fun of him and have no idea that work was his sanctuary from his hell, and now you're making work miserable for him too. So then he goes to work and he's miserable because guys are clowning on him, and then he goes home and he's miserable because he's dealing with all this other stuff and he has nothing else.
100% true.
Right?
Absolutely true.
So, all right, folks. Donn, do you have any contact information or anything you'd like to share with anybody?
Sure. I can actually be.
You don't have to.
Well, no. I can be reached at 925-446-5724. That's my work phone number, and then I can also be reached at therapywithdon@gmail.com.
Okay, so if you're in the Northern California area and you feel like Don might be the guy that you can talk to, if you're in the Northern California area and you feel like Don is somebody you can talk to, by all means, he just gave out his information. I mean, that's as good as with any type of help or counselor or therapist.
I do
that you could
online
ask.
stuff as well. So for the, I'm not a huge fan of it. I actually do I prefer the in-person stuff, but that's just because I want to see what you're doing. I want to be able to dissect your brain. But otherwise, I do it just because I know there's a lot of folks out there that need help.
All right, folks. Well, this is the Serving the Peace podcast. Thank you for joining us. Don, you have anything else you want to add?
I'm all good.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and cut it.